Steve?
Level up.
Levelling up.
Level up.
So level up.
Level up. Level up.
Terrific. Brilliant. We're levelling up. That's
Levelled up.
How many times have you got to say this?
It's the slogan that has loomed large over left-behind areas since it was first promised at the general election over 2 years ago. Long in search of some substance, today the detail of how levelling up will be delivered has finally been unveiled. And after a tough few weeks, the Prime Minister was making the most of it.
A wonderful moral and economic mission to level up and give opportunity across the whole country. A fantastic vision for this country, Mr. Speaker. They have nothing of the kind to offer the people of this country.
But it was this man that made it all happen.
This white paper lays out a long-term economic and social plan to make opportunity more equal. It shifts power and opportunity towards the North and Midlands, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And it demonstrates that this people's government is keeping faith with the working people of this country by allowing them to take back control of their lives, their communities and their futures. And I commend this statement to the House.
A boost for the beleaguered Conservative benches, but the plan, which includes some surprising historical references, didn't go down well with the opposition.
Seriously, is this it? The sum total of our ambition for our coastal and industrial towns, our villages and our great cities is a history lesson on the rise of the Roman Empire. A minister scurrying around Whitehall, shuffling the deck chairs, cobbling together a shopping list of recycled policies and fiddling the figures. Is this really it?
The policy will be broken down into 12 national missions designed to reverse regional inequalities that include increasing pay and productivity, improving transport and broadband, raising education standards and skills, life expectancy and people's sense of pride and well-being, increasing home ownership and reducing crime. And this is one of its architects, Andy Haldane, former chief economist at the Bank of England. For him, this is about more than just policy.
I myself was born in Sunderland, a place not doing especially well. Grew up just north of Leeds at the time of the 1980s recession. To get on, I had to get out. I had to get the train south, and I was stuck down here. That's why it matters to me.
You know, there might be people that are looking at this announcement today and saying, well, that sounds like a lovely vision of the future, but it feels very far away from their lives living from day to day. What would you say to those people?
Well, I absolutely understand the concerns and the pressures that many, many households are facing right now through the cost of living pressures and other pressures that you mentioned. I think what the white paper today does, though, is begin the process of establishing, the firm foundations on which will enable people to thrive.
Much of the responsibility for the rollout will fall to regional mayors, with many more set to be created across England. But where does that leave councils already struggling after many years of cuts?
Very clearly, local authorities still do the things that they did in the past, provide all those critical services. These are about new things that have to be done at regional levels, and particularly thinking about the economic development, some of the things that have been talked about today, brownfield regeneration, innovation accelerators, the whole idea of smart city regions. They're all new thinking that will drive the regeneration of an area like this, and they complement the critical roles local authorities play day after day.
As part of the plan, 20 places across England have been earmarked for a quick injection of regeneration cash. One of those is Wolverhampton. So what do people here make of the policy?
I'm optimistic. We've got the trams coming around to the station and hopefully.
Okay, so you've already seen a few improvements?
Yes, we have. So once it starts, I'm sure it'll get there. Yeah.
Have you seen any signs of it yet?
Slowly, little streams coming through, the tram, the production line, the train station, and we know that they're going to do the development down there. Mm-hmm. They've done the construction college, they've done the Thomas Telford School, so It's good news.
Well, I'll believe it when I see it happen.
It's been over 2 years since Boris Johnson made the promise to level up. Today, he's finally defined it. The question now, can he deliver it?
Well, the Levelling Up white paper published today is, if you've had a little peek, more than 300 pages long. So how to make sense of all the detail inside it? Let's go to Paul McNamara, who's had a closer look.
Kathy, levelling up is a monumental task, especially considering the inequalities in the UK, and austerity cut local authorities deep. Quite simply, they have less money than they did a decade ago. It picked up a little bit since 2016, but all in, local authority spending power is down more than 15% since 2009. But the pain has not been spread evenly. In the northeast, local authority spending is down 24%. In the northwest, it's down 22%. But in the southeast, it's down only 12%. There's no new money, and even the experts don't know how much levelling up will cost.
It's almost hopeless to think about how many billions does it require, because it requires a complete overhaul of policy right across the board, and that will undoubtedly come with a big price tag as well.
This plan is so vast. Let's just look at two areas. So firstly, public transport. The ambition is to bring regional public transport, quote, significantly closer to London levels. Well, in the last decade, the North has received just £349 per person in transport spending. London, £864. The roughest of calculations, plugging that gap would cost £8 billion over a decade. Now, forget cancelled branches of HS2. Let's just have a look at buses. Over this Parliament, the government has committed £3 billion to improve bus services across England. Terrific. But between 2009 and just before the pandemic, 3,000 bus services were cancelled, and a huge number of them were across the north. And what about the greatest driver of social mobility, education? The attainment gap has stalled in the last 5 years. In some areas, including Blackpool, Knowsley and Plymouth, poorer pupils are now more than 2 full school years of education behind by the time they take their GCSEs. These towns fall into 55 new education investment areas, deprived areas where initiatives include an offer of more money to good teachers, a sort of pay-to-stay scheme. But unions say many of the areas targeted for support have been some of the hardest hit by education cuts over the past decade, and we're playing catch-up. Now look, one thing that unites campaign groups, think tanks, unions, is that they all welcome the ambition here, but they say more money is needed. Bold ambitions come with bold costs, and there hasn't been any new cash announced today.
Paul McNamara there. Well, earlier I spoke to the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, and I began by asking if he was disappointed that no new money was allocated to his 12 big missions.
There's lots of new money in our plan. The Chancellor, in the spending review, allocated significant sums to my department and others. Public spending is at the highest level that it's ever been. And the money being put into our bank accounts in the spending review is now being spent.
Yeah, but you're making this big announcement today without any new cash. It's basically allocating the cash.
No, there's loads of new
there.
cash. Yeah.
It's allocating what was already committed in the spending review.
Well, there was money on a Treasury spreadsheet. It is now actually being spent. There's the difference between an exercise in accountancy and changing people's lives. So if you think that there is no new money, talk to people in Sheffield who were seeing investment and have welcomed investment in the transformation of their city centre. Talk to people in Wolverhampton who have welcomed the specific investment that we're making in urban regeneration. Yesterday, the Education Secretary announced 55 different local government areas in which there would be additional investment in children's education. Today, I'll be announcing additional investment in everything from pilots in order to ensure that we can tackle obesity in those areas where health inequalities are greatest, to more money for research and development, including in Manchester, Glasgow and Birmingham.
Right, but all of that sounds great, but here's what you've done in government. You've cut Northern Powerhouse Rail and HS2. Local spending cuts during the austerity years have been much bigger in deprived areas than in wealthier areas, and some of the wealthiest parts of England, including ministers' seats, have actually got 10 times more money per head than the poorest under existing levelling up strategies. So that's your record. Is that now going to change?
Yes, I contest some of the figures there, but I won't get into the detail now. Though we can
They're from
later.
the IFS and they're in black and white.
Oh, no, sure. But I think the inferences that some people draw from those figures are wrong. But the broad point is a fair one. Has funding been over-concentrated in London and the South East in the past? Yes. And that is what we are changing. We are deliberately ensuring that we address geographical inequality. Geographical inequality is something that has bedeviled this country for generations. You can look back at past Conservative and Labour governments, and you can see noble attempts from both to transform the economic geography of this country. Those efforts have not made the difference that people felt that they needed. That's why we had the 2016 Brexit result. It's why Boris won a landslide majority in 2019 with a mission to address it. And today we're outlining a detailed plan to take that forward.
And just be clear about what's at stake. If you don't get this right, do you risk losing the next election, do you think?
Well, it's worse than that. If we don't get this right, then we're not playing fair by the people of this country. I mean, like any politician, I would prefer my party to be in power, but actually what is more important is that we see that shift of wealth and power towards working people and their families, and it's important that this agenda is picked up and supported by people from all political parties. You know, the UK is a great success story. There are so many things that we can be proud of, great broadcasting, great culture, great creativity, but we're still an unequal country, and it's geographical inequality, which is one of the starkest inequalities.
I want to ask you a personal question, if I may, because you're one of the few members of the Cabinet who know what levelling up means in a personal capacity, because you were adopted as a baby by a working-class Aberdonian couple. So tell us, is this a personal mission? What does levelling up, what has it meant for you in your life?
Well, it means a great deal to me, because I think that ultimately the purpose of being in politics is to provide opportunities to those who may not have enjoyed them in the past. But the whole government is committed to this mission. So yes, it's personal for me, but it's also personal for Rishi, for Sajid, for Nadeem, for the whole team, because we recognise that ultimately our job is to make sure that wherever you grow up in this country, you should have a chance to succeed. And whatever your definition of success is, it shouldn't be defined by someone else. You have the chance to achieve fulfilment.
Every day there's a new Conservative MP who comes out and calls for the Prime Minister to resign. Can you guarantee that he will be Prime Minister at the next election, let alone in 2030 when these promises come to fruition?
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that he's the Prime Minister at the next election and that he wins the next election.
Has the Prime Minister ever lied to you?
No.
You believe everything he's ever told you?
Yes.
Should he then retract what the former Conservative Chief Whip has called a false and baseless slur that he levelled against Sir Keir Starmer in the Commons on Jimmy Savile?
No, these are very sensitive matters. And I can understand the concern that's been, totally understand the concern that's been expressed. But just for the record, and just factually, and I'm not blaming anyone, it was the case that the CPS acknowledged that a mistake had been made and apologised.
And Sir Keir had nothing to do with that?
No, to Sir Keir's credit, he appointed Alison Levitt as an independent lawyer to look at the whole affair, and she concluded that mistakes were made, and he quite rightly, as a leader, took responsibility for things that had happened in his organisation. Even though it wasn't his mistake at all, I think he handled it very well.
And finally, Dominic Cummings was a close friend of yours. He worked with you. He's now, in his own words, on a mission to clean the drains, to topple the Prime Minister. Do you feel personally betrayed by him?
No, I don't. I mean, I feel, well, it's painful. I work very closely with Dominic. As I said earlier today, I've still got a deep reservoir of affection for him. But I just think it's wrong for him to be saying and doing what he's doing at the moment. We need to get behind the Prime Minister.
When did you last talk to Dominic Cummings?
Just after he left Downing Street.
Will you ever talk to him again? That's a no then. Michael Gove, thanks very much.